welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to discuss an INTJ facing the irrational. All of life rests upon childhood in the end. From the moment of conception, the process is on overdrive. Starting out as a single cell, children develop within just a few years into talking, walking, and thinking creatures. They learn an incredible number of things before they even begin school. However, while most kids are learning to play well with others, the INTJ child is already on a different path because he is a thinking, rational creature. I clearly remember as a small child thinking that a reasonable argument should win the day when deciding things. However, my mother was not an adherent of this school of thought. She felt that getting along with others was more important than logic. I had a cousin who had some issues which were none of his own doing. He provided the catalyst for creating a memory that made things quite clear to me that the world does not worship reason and logic. The Nabisco company had come up with a novel marketing scheme. They created little plastic characters that had spacesuits on, and the head was in the shape of the Nabisco logo. On the top of the head was an antenna, created with a vertical support and two crossing pieces. It was more or less in the shape of a pine tree or the top of a telephone pole. The characters were called spoon men, if memory serves, because they could be locked onto your spoon as you ate, and there was a cutout on the bottom that matched up with the standard spoon size. In any case, that antenna was very fragile, and I had lost the antennas off of all but one of my spoon men, so I was protecting that one. I knew my cousin had a mean streak, and if I let him play with the spoon man, he would break that antenna off. He wanted to play with it, and I told him no. But Mom stepped in and told me I should share. I told her that he would break it. She then insisted and forced me to hand it over to him. He instantly grabbed the antenna and snapped it off. Then he smiled. Now, whatever Mom was hoping to teach me, what she taught me was that I better cover my own bases, because even those I was supposed to trust were irrational, especially when it came to dealing with other people. Time moved on, and I found that the issues that could come up at home were nothing compared with what would come along with school. The school system really should be named School for Extroverts, because it surely didn't have me in mind. School was not a place of rational thought. Instead, it combined activities that would supposedly help children to learn to interact with each other, together with disconnected ideas with no proper foundation laid for them. The social stuff was completely incomprehensible to me. When a group activity was announced, I groaned inside because I knew it would be unpleasant. However, the one area that could have been really good wasn't. My mind demands that whatever I am attempting to learn must have an attached reason for learning it. When I know why I'm learning something and my mind buys into that reason, you can't stop it from soaking up everything it can on the topic. But if an idea is just hanging disconnected in space all by itself, I just won't care about it. And when I don't care about it, I lose all interest in it. I want everything to fit into a pattern, and a disconnected idea is not part of a pattern. As I matured, I developed my own mental database, and then I could often create my own patterns into which new ideas could merge. Even an inept teacher could then be worked around. One thing that kept tripping me up was that the world ran on illogical, unwritten laws. You would think that a brilliant mind should be enough to deal with life, but it is not so. Years ago, I watched a movie called The Goodbye Girl. And Richard Dreyfuss asked Marcia Mason, "What is it about you that makes a man with a 147 IQ feel like a dribbling idiot?" What INTJ hasn't had a similar feeling when dealing with extroverted feelers? There's no way to think past the irrational. And when I was small, I never once thought of myself as brilliant or even of normal intelligence. Life made no sense to me the way people acted and what the school was doing, and so I assumed I was of subnormal intelligence. I was sure of it, in fact. But at the same time, I didn't care. I liked myself, even if I were stupid. Of course, that wasn't good enough. I wasn't verbally beat up just for what I was doing in school and the bad grades I was getting, but rather, Dad chastised me with great intensity for being intelligent. He repeatedly yelled at me that the teachers told him that I should easily be at the top of my class, and I was failing. I had no idea what he was talking about. The people and the school were a mystery to me. Since the other kids were doing fine with all of that, clearly I was stupid. This was a recurring theme in my life. I have been hit with similar arguments and accusations from parents, teachers, my spouse, and others. They just didn't understand how I could not relate to the world with its illogical, extroverted focus. Life in our society is constructed upon the unalterable axiom that cannot be challenged. To be extroverted is normal, and to be introverted is abnormal. Society consistently expressed its displeasure for who I was. I was frowned upon for how I acted. I was odd. I was weird. And most damning of all, I was antisocial. I didn't fit in, and for the most part, I didn't care. How dare I? And something they really wouldn't appreciate, my own mind, which over time I grew to depend upon more and more as something that I could trust, told me that the ones who I was supposed to be emulating were not worthy of my respect. Many of them were rude, nasty, selfish, and abusive kids. They were considered normal, and I was considered abnormal. Really? Seriously? You want me to be like them? As I grew into an adult, I found that the people had only polished up their act a bit, and they put up a facade. The extroverted preference was just as strong as ever. I found that jobs often evaluate you specifically on your level of extroversion, how well you function in a group. I found that it was up to me in the end. The INTJ has to select a job that allows him to operate on solo tasks. Can you imagine how tough it would have been for Sir Isaac Newton to revolutionize physics if he had to work in a group? I learned that being a teacher was a solo act. It worked well for me. A teacher works with others, and of course groups, but he is his own master and calls the shots. An engineer designs things that he is responsible for. A technician who is called in to fix tough problems for others is a lone wolf. I loved doing that. On the other end of the spectrum, have you ever watched, or even worse, worked in the area of customer service and complaints? These people field complaints from unhappy customers, and their job is to create happy customers out of those who complain. It doesn't matter whether the customer is a civilized person who has a legitimate complaint, or a whining, irrational moron who is furious that the product is working just as advertised and he is merely using it incorrectly, or his expectations were misguided. Give me Jacob Marley's chains and cash boxes over that job. And remember that many of these unintelligent and irrational people are considered normal in society, because generally they play well with others. People are considered to be good people because they care about dozens of things that they cannot and never will fix, but they care. In the final analysis, we INTJs have one extremely valuable strength, whereby we can face the irrational world. We recognize the irrational and assign to it its proper value, which is 0. You may pity or even love someone who is irrational, but you don't take their opinion seriously. Fortune has smiled upon the INTJ, granting us the freedom to discard irrational ideas. Indeed, it is ours to own and to cherish. However, this freedom is something we will gladly share with those who have the good sense to value it. If you enjoyed the video, please hit like, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. I'll see you next time.